you're dealing with so many personalities. Then you deal with the pay issue. I can see why a young person may get dissuaded or want to go somewhere else. I love everything about the building, even the stuff that people hate. It's all what fuels me. But I can see how a lot of young people would get turned off. It's like impossible to hire people right now. What we're trying to do is really try to avoid that situation of having to hire someone by having a team that's gonna feel like they can stick with us and that they want to stick with us.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. I am your host, Jarrett Blondin, and today we're glad to be joined by Aaron Vad, Chief of Staff of Assemblyman Connolly. 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 Aaron,
Nice to
how's
be
it
here.
going?
Good, man.
Good
Thanks for
seeing
having
you.
me. Yeah, you too.
No worries. So you've been kind of like social media wise, just kind of like taking over my Twitter feed with you and your dog.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So kind of what's the story with your dog and being in the building and
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a psyop.
Yeah.
This is how I plan to take over social
Really?
media.
Yeah.
I knew the only reason I would ever get in Politico would be some like dog related
You've been trying.
incident.
Well, at least
so
a positive,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. But my partner and I adopted this amazing dog,
Mhm.
Kira, and I got her certified to be in the building, which I think is the first time anyone's ever requested that.
Right.
The rules process was really weird, and they gave me.
Wait, you had to go through assembly rules?
Oh
to
yeah,
get the
no,
dog?
you can't just like bring a dog
Wow.
to work. Yeah, and especially in the building. I think it's more lax if you're not staff.
Mhm.
They kind of take your word for it if it's a
If you're a
service
member.
dog. Yeah. But I know we had some issues in the past with members just bringing their dogs in.
Right.
So yeah, you have to get certified. I have like a little mark on my badge, but all the security folks know her now. So it's it's been great. She's a good addition to the office.
And what kind of dog is this?
It's a Great Pyrenees and Aussie Shepherd.
Okay,
She was a stray for 2 years up in Shasta County.
Mhm.
And my girlfriend found her on the SPCA website, and we saw a picture of her and just like went straight there and
Yeah.
rescued her. Yeah.
So a lot of energy, a lot of work taking her out a couple times.
Yeah, she's not. She likes to chill.
Mm-hmm.
She likes to. Pyrenees are very protective, so they're used a lot of the time on like farmland.
Right.
So she protects the office basically.
Yeah.
She like checks in with everyone and then likes to be in a central position where she can see the front door.
Right.
We're trying to train her right now because sometimes like lobbyists such as yourself will enter and she might bark a little bit.
Right. I was about to say, does she know the good lobbyists from the bad?
Well, she's starting to recognize people. Shouts out to my boy Alex Torres. She loves him, but she needs to meet people a couple times.
Yeah.
To get comfortable with them, basically. But it's not aggressive, so don't be worried if she barks at you. She's just like letting us know that you're there, basically, which is great because I'd like to know if you're there as well. So
you don't need a bell.
it all works out. Yeah.
Person.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. So, I think I remember this last year, you were proclaiming yourself to be one of the youngest chiefs of staff ever in history.
Yeah.
Kind of what was the process that led you to become a chief of staff? I think I remember, were you like a fellow or something like that in
No.
Ruth's office?
Got rejected from the fellows twice, so didn't make the cut, but then I just went the normal route and got in anyway. So I will say I'm not the youngest chief of staff anymore. Assembly member Addis's chief, I believe, is 27. I'm 29.
Yeah, and you started when you were 28, right?
Yeah, I became a chief at 28 for Assembly member O'Donnell. I think at that time I was probably the youngest in the building. But I'll be turning 30 at the end of the month, so I'm slowly just going to lose that title anyway as I get closer to my ultimate demise.
Who has the reign of the oldest chief of staff?
Oh, I don't want to get into that, dude. I could definitely
hang on for that.
I could think of a few, but I'm not gonna. Yeah,
no, not gonna name
yeah.
names. So how'd you get in the building? Kind of what was your journey to kind of becoming a staffer?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was easy in the sense that I always knew what I wanted to do. When I was 19, I went to college at CSU Channel Islands.
Mm-hmm.
I was not.
Is it actually on an island?
It's
like
not. People ask that a lot. It's actually more interesting than being on an island. It's in an old mental hospital. So the Camarillo State Mental Hospital, which was like one of those like old school mental hospitals where they were doing lobotomies and weird stuff for people who were criminally insane. Actually, they shut that down. Reagan shut it down during his administration, and they just renovated the place. So like you'd have doors. All the doors were really wide, so they'd have to push the gurneys through them. And when I was there, it was only about 10 years old, so it was fairly new. It was the newest CSU. Mm-hmm. Some of the buildings weren't renovated yet, so they were all locked up, and you could go and like peer through the windows, and you could still see like all the creepy old medical stuff, like gurneys and like medical equipment,
like haunted tours through the.
Yeah, supposedly it's one of the most haunted like campuses in the country, and like one of the most haunted places, I don't know, in the country as well. On the campus there's this hill with this big old wooden well, and that's actually the well they filmed The Ring. The one where the girl like comes out of the well. Yeah, that's on our campus.
Wow.
Like we used to like run up to it and like for exercise.
Everyone's all excited because like Leonardo DiCaprio is allegedly filming something around here.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, we just saw him here or there.
Yeah.
Like random spots in Sacramento.
Yeah.
So
I didn't get any sightings of the girl from The Ring. No. Or ghosts for that matter.
That's good. So no paranormal experiences.
No, I mean, look, I don't want to get into ghosts on this podcast, but I had friends who were very intelligent and, like atheists and did not believe in any of that stuff and had some weird shit happen to them. But I don't know. Nothing happened to me personally, so I can't attest to the haunted nature of my former school.
So you go from the Channel Islands, you graduate, and then kind of
so I got into politics down there because it was a hot area during the time. There's Julia Brownlee, our congresswoman down there. She was running against a state assembly member who I believe then Jackie Irwin took that assembly seat. It was Republican for a while. It was a very purple district. It was one of like the top 5 most competitive races in 2014, which was a brutal year for Democrats.
10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. But Brownlee pulled it off and kept her seat. And after working on that campaign, I went and interned for Assemblymember Irwin in her district office, and I was just like sold on state politics basically. So I knew that trajectory is where I wanted to go. I couldn't get a job in the building.
So you're in the district.
Yeah.
Down kind of like outside LA.
Yeah.
And you're just doing district staff work.
Basically, yeah. And then so when I graduated, I couldn't get the job that I wanted. And this is another thing that like getting
What job did you want?
I wanted to go work in the Capitol because I was more interested in policy. I like district work too, but
okay, what's the difference for us who've never worked in a district office? Like, what's the difference between like district work and like building work?
So to compare it to like a show, I would say like district work is Parks and Rec, and Capitol work is more like Veep. But basically, district work, you're interfacing with the community. Bread and butter is constituent casework. Right. So folks call in with like issues with like the DMV or really anything that's government related, and you help them like cut through the bureaucracy basically. Right. And
does it work?
It does.
Are you guys great bureaucracy cutters?
Yeah. I mean, it's an illustration of how like kind of broken the system is overall. Because if you just spend a little time or have a little knowledge about how the system works, like it can be as simple as sending an email while a regular person is banging their heads against the wall because they're calling like an 800 number and can't get through to anyone. This was huge during COVID with EDD.
Yeah.
Like district offices became de facto EDD offices. Like we had hundreds
EDD fast track.
of EDD cases because they couldn't handle them. And at a point, actually, like Bank of America and I think EDD themselves were actually like, hey, call your local assembly member. Like
so
that, yeah.
Yeah, for like a little perspective, like in 2014, you're coming out of college. Like, what does like a district staff make per month?
Oh, God. I mean, so I'll say I did a year in AmeriCorps, and then I got a field rep position. I think I was making like $30,000 a year. I was living, for perspective, I was living in a closet that was converted in Long Beach with a random man that I met on Craigslist. That sounds very sketchy, but it was actually, it all worked out. Like he was very nice and everything, but like not ideal situation
cost you
at all. Way too much, dude. I think I was paying like $800 for the closet. Yeah.
It's probably $1,600
now. yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was hungry. I was,
and then you
like,
have to commute all the way up to
I mean, I loved it though. And that was, so my first real field rep job was with the now Speaker Emeritus, Rendon. So I was living in Long Beach. And then his district office was in Lakewood. So I did that for about a year. And then, you know, figured I'm not going to wait to get a position in Sacramento. I'm just going to move there and start applying. And then I was able to get a legislative aid job with.
Did they give you any advice?
Yeah.
Like people you'd meet on the campaign trail and all that stuff?
Well, that was what like gave me the confidence to do it, because I had like Rendon, folks I had met, like his deputy chief of staff Juan at the time, and other people I had just come across that would vouch for me and help me, which is like the most valuable currency up here, is just having folks, you know, put in a good word for you with someone. I had always kept in touch with Assemblymember Irwin. We still keep in touch to this day. Literally since I was like 19 years old. She's always been like there to give advice or like put in a good word for me. So those are the kind of relationship I always encourage, like students who are doing poli-sci, like don't just, you know, focus on the academics, like go and get internships, because the people you're going to meet are going to be able to get you your job or be your direct supervisor. In my case, like when I got my job with Assemblymember Rudy Salas, his chief of staff, Carla Castilla, when I was president of the Channel Islands Democratic Club, she was running for a supervisor seat in Ventura County, and I helped organize on her campaign. So she like remembered me from all the way back then. We had always kept in touch, like, you know, sporadically on like Facebook or whatever. But it's like that connection obviously was meaningful in her hiring me, right? She knew what I was capable of doing.
Did they ever ask you your GPA?
No.
Did they ever
Never
look at your grades, test scores?
No.
Master's degrees?
No. And
mattered,
I got a master's degree a couple years ago, and I can't say that it's done anything for me. To be quite honest.
That's the most important PSA. Like, save your money, kids.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say get the job. Like my professor from Channel Islands had me talk to his class like last week, and I was just like, if you're thinking of getting a master's degree, education is priceless. I don't want to smash on education, but like, dude, get a job first.
It's
like, don't think that going to a BA to a master's, at least in politics, is gonna help you, because it's not. So like, get the job first, and then like, you know, do the master's program at night.
So it's interesting. So you had a good, 6 years of experience pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Before the political staffing world changed. Yeah,
it's completely different.
Yeah. So your first job in Sacramento was with?
Assemblymember Salas,
Salas,
Well, then Assemblymember. Now he's obviously running for Congress in the Central Valley.
And you were there, 2 years?
Probably more than that. I think I was probably like 3.5. I went from Ledge Aide to Ledge Director there. Then I got the opportunity to be Assemblymember O'Donnell's chief of staff for his last year. And then when he termed out, hopped on with Assemblymember Connolly, and have been with him since.
So this is like, I guess the interesting thing is, when you're with a member and they're leaving or there's not that much time left, it's kind of like, oh, do I go? Because what's my next jumping point? Like, how do you find that next spot?
And that was a big conversation and like decision that I had to make. And again, going back to like making good relationships and like forming those bonds with people who are like in the power structure. O'Donnell wanted a chief for his last year, and went to the speaker and was like, hey, can you get me some candidates? And I think Carrie was like, Aaron would be great for your last year, because like he already had an incredible team. Like the ship was kind of running itself, but they wanted someone young who they knew was like, I think an institutionalist and was going to stay with the building, because we're having so many young people leave. And so to get that experience for the last year was invaluable, but it was also like a great training, because I didn't have to start from scratch. I was coming into like a well-oiled machine. And Pat, like if anyone's met Mr. O'Donnell, he's a very chill guy. So I think he didn't want someone that was gonna, micromanage too much.
Right.
And it was great training for the next thing, which was Assemblymember Connolly, which was straight up new member, like building a team from scratch, right? A lot more work and a lot more chief duties, right? So that worked out really nicely. And it's strange when like a member's leaving, especially after session ends, because you're kind of like in recess, and you're just like, I guess, all right, see, will I ever see you again? I don't know.
And this is kind of, I don't know, I guess there's like a couple things like with the young staff leaving, right, is, there's only so many spots, one. Two, like pay wise, right? Like it's just not like you can make more money every year, right? You have to like move, you have to go from like assembly to Senate, right? You have to go like outside the building, back inside the building.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about that kind of game, about how how do you climb that pay ladder?
It's something that I've tried to change, because I think there's a misconception that like if you're working in the legislature, like you're just doomed to get paid like absolute crap.
Right.
There is a limit, and like the pay is definitely lower than the private sector, but these are choices that people like chiefs of staff make and members make in terms of who they want to hire and how many people they want to hire. So I know our new speaker's chief of staff, Liz, like she's has very, what I share and think are like very great attitudes about kind of breaking this old structure of having like 5 ledge aides and paying them all horribly, instead of having maybe 2 ledge aides and paying them better, right? Like we all have a budget. You can choose to have, and that's how I run my office. Right. Like you can choose to have a lean staff and pay them more equitably, or you can choose to bloat if you want to have like, that kind of Veep situation where you're like running around with a bunch of staff everywhere and you have like all of these people around you. I don't think it's necessary. Like you really don't, like you don't need 5 ledge aides, dude.
Well, especially
like
this
you
new
just
building,
don't.
There's like no space for people.
There's literally no physical space. Yeah. So like you're actually, because of like fire hazard or like you need to have a desk, right? Or else you could get sued for,
now the desks are like in
having your back screwed up or something.
Yeah, the copy pantry room, some of these, and you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, we're like building desks on desks. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point too, because we're actually a little bit more limited now by physical space too, depending on what office you're in. But I think it's just I think some members think like the more staff they have, the better, when it's really like quality over quantity.
Yeah, the better staff,
right?
The better,
yeah.
That's interesting. So I guess like that's kind of funny, like how an office is set up and how members set offices up. You're right. You see like all over the board.
Yeah.
Kind of. So what was your thinking? So you come in with a new member, kind of like, what was your pitch to him? Like, this is what we should do.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I pitched. And it's something I hope, I mean, I kind of see maybe it's catching on. Also, it might just be the physical space limitations. I'm not sure. But it was always like lean staff, pay everyone higher than average. So it's more equitable. They're taken care of. And also that we don't have turnover, because that's also a huge issue, is people churning in and out. And like you're constantly in this perpetual hiring phase. Yeah. Hugely disruptive, I can say, like as a chief, the hiring process, just like the paperwork and the candidates and the interviewing is like such a time suck that I can't imagine doing it like during the heat of session, you know? Right. So yeah, I mean, we have a lead director, one ledge aide, a scheduler, and that was it for a while, because he's the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Climate Change Policy. Mm-hmm. We get one committee consultant through that, which is fantastic, because we get to have like a real environmental expert and like climate energy expert. Right. But it doesn't come through our budget, so that helps a lot because we would never be able to afford them. And then recently, we were able to bring on a communication staffer. So that's it. And we're not, as you mentioned before, we literally do not have the space for anyone else right now. So even if we wanted to hire someone else, you know, that would be it. And then we have 3 people in the district.
It's funny. It's like you see like some offices like try to scrimp on like a scheduler, for example. And
oof, bad idea, man.
I know. It's like you don't realize how valuable a great scheduler is until you don't have one. And like just talking with a lot of the veteran schedulers who've been around for 20, 30 years, like they're so good at like packing the schedule. And that's like the essence of what it is to be a member. You're there to meet with people all day, to be available. And it's very interesting hearing that.
Yeah, it'll be said time and time again. I'm sure has been said on this podcast, but the scheduler is the most important person in the building by far. Yeah. It's absolutely the most essential job.
Biggest hack, take care of the schedule.
Yeah, and our scheduler Christina is incredible. She's been with us since Rudy's office, as well as my ledge director. Yeah. So I knew like those 2 hires specifically. I really wanted Damon to meet them like right off the bat. I think like Damon was up here because they had to come up here for the speaker's vote, I think Thursday, so like 2 days or less after the election. Mm-hmm. And we were like already meeting with candidates.
So how did you know, when did you know that you were going to go work for Damon?
So I started going because I think I mentioned to you, but I'm from our district. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Mill Valley, which is, we have Marin County, all of it, and then Southern Sonoma County. So I had known Damon not well, but like through, everyone knows him at the district. Yeah. He's been like a workhorse in that area for so long, as a Marin County supervisor. So he's kind of like a household name for sure in Marin. And then, you know, we're building that in Sonoma County now as well. But I got in touch with him early on during the campaign and just started going down there weekends, and just became kind of like an integral part of his campaign. We became, you know, good friends and started talking about the future. I mean, I told him straight, if you can't tell, I'm a very like upfront and open person. Not a lot of filter going on here. So I told him, I don't know, probably like the 3rd week we had been meeting up, because he was coming up here a lot too. I was like, hey, I want to be your chief of staff when you get here, right? And kind of made the pitch to him. It's rare you get a chief of staff who's from your district. You know, most folks are, I think, predominantly, it seems like from LA or from here. So it's a unique factor, and it's obviously super important if you understand the district. Right. Like that informs all of your decisions.
Because like some members have chiefs of staff, but they're in the district. They're in the district office.
Yeah, that also happens, which is honestly a little weird to me. But if it works for you, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, paying attention to the district is key. and Damon is 100% focused on the district. So we shook hands at Maiawell.
Yeah.
Classic.
Right across the street here, yeah.
Yeah. And said, hey, if we win, like, yeah, you're on. And I trusted him, so I didn't apply for anything else. Put all my eggs in his basket. I was confident.
Yeah.
And it was a tough race too. It was a dem on dem, but it was a brutal fight for sure. So it wasn't a sure thing, but I felt good about it. So
that's what I don't know. I kind of grew up in like this kind of horse racing world, and I always kind of like look at members and chiefs of staff, and like the chiefs of staff are kind of like jockeys, and they're picking their horses, and it's kind of like which guy's going to bring me to the finish line. And it kind of, especially when you're looking at like leadership and things like that, like if you can pick a member who's going to become speaker, it's like life changing, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you, just based on size of how short I am and how big of a dude Damon is, that would be that would be an applicable comparison for sure.
Yeah. So you've been in the building now, what?
I'm going on like 6 years, yeah.
So what have you noticed? Like, how has your world changed, pre-COVID to now? Like, how are you seeing the business of being kind of a chief of staff as different?
So I think, a couple things happen. As I said, like pre-COVID, like I was fighting to get like a $30K position and like living in a closet. Like that was expected. And I don't think it was probably healthy that my mindset was like, this is great. Like this is what I aspire to, is $30K and living on a random guy's closeting from priceless, right? I think after COVID, also the Me Too movement gave staff, and not only in the building, but throughout the country in different industries, young people, like a stronger sense of self-worth. Like being faced with like an apocalyptic situation, like a virus killing millions of people that we never thought was going to happen, and being like, do I want to live in a closet in Long Beach, right? Or is there more to life? I think a lot of people made the decision that like there is more. There's obviously less stressful, better opportunities in other sectors. It's such a like can of worms when you're working in the building, dealing with members, and chiefs are sometimes like members too, in terms of how they can mistreat staff or have their own egos and like issues or quirks, right? You're dealing with so many personalities, and that with Third House too. Then you deal with like the pay issue, and then you sum that all up. I can see why a young person may get dissuaded or want to go somewhere else, right? That's not me. Like I love everything about the building, even the stuff that people hate. Like it's all what like fuels me. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can see how a lot of young people would get like turned off, or just like after I'm going to third, I'm going to Third House. Like why I can kind of like be involved with the same work tangentially and make more money, and not have to deal with like a member or other staff. So like that, I think that's really what it was, and I can tell you it's made a huge difference. It's like impossible to hire people right now.
That's what the building. Just anywhere in general. You're talking about. Like, people just aren't looking for the same type of work, and like the idea of like being in at 8 and leaving. God knows when. Sometimes. Just doesn't, like, people are like, wow, I could just stay at home and be in my pajamas.
I think it helped. Like what we're trying to do is, or at least what I'm trying to do, and I think the assembly member as well, is like really try to avoid that situation of having to hire someone, by having a team that's going to feel like they can stick with us and that they want to stick with us. So I think part of what needs to change, and what has been changing in the building since COVID too, I think this is defining for politics, but also happens in other industries like medicine a lot too, or academia is this like old adage of like suffering is somehow like beneficial, or like
you should lumps in.
Pay your dues, whatever. There's an element to that which I think is fair, which is just like, work hard, right? But to tell like young staffers or people working in the building that like being yelled at is okay, or like I got a stapler thrown at me, so now I'm gonna treat everyone like dirt,
right.
But like you should enjoy it and like be thankful you have a job in this institution. And it is like, it's a huge privilege to work here. That doesn't mean you should have to take shit from people though, and especially members too. It's like, members are not gods. They're elected officials. They are very important, and we need to respect their position, but that doesn't give them a license to mistreat staff. And I think that's what needs to change, really, is something we're doing in my office, and I think the assembly member feels the same way, is like our staff, they're not just employees, like they're family, like they're friends, we don't treat them as like commodities. We want them to feel safe, want them to have fun. We want them to work hard because they want to work hard, not because they're afraid that I'm going to like throw an inanimate object at them.
Because the whole reason usually you get into politics because you want to help people, right? You want to make a difference, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's really like why I think one of the reasons it's hard to hire people now is like, you need to find those like West Wing dorks who are like
anymore.
Me, like me, like
no West Wing.
Like you need to find the people that are like fired up and passionate, because like who else is it's gonna work in this world, right? You have to find those people that are like, oh no, like most normal. Like when I explain things to my girlfriend, she's like, oh, that sounds awful, and I'm like, oh, it's so much fun. I love this. Like, so like we need more of those people. So come and apply to Sacramento.
That's funny. So like, the past few years, there's been like a lot of talk about staff unionization. One point it seemed like it never was going to happen, and last year it happens. Kind of, what's the current landscape of the staff unionization and discussions on that?
Dude, I don't know. I'm out of it.
You're out of it, huh?
I'm a chief. I'm not part of it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I think they included maybe ledge directors. But no, I mean, I think there's going to be a few years. I think they delayed the implementation. But I remember talking to someone in rules about it probably 2 years ago, and they were like, we're getting ready. Like behind the scenes, they've been preparing. So I think they're ready. I don't want to speak for them, but they saw it coming,
right?
Very smartly. And they've been preparing whatever they need to do, like rules wise, HR wise, for that transition, I think. So institutionally, I think things have been happening behind the scenes, but in terms of like the union and what that's going to look like, I have no idea.
Really? Wow.
But I wish them the best.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I always hear like, just in all sorts of industries, but it was funny. Like my son plays baseball, and his coach is a high school teacher, and one of the team's moms is a teacher, and they're talking about like, man, kids these days, they're just not the same. They just show up in pajamas. They don't want to learn. Are you noticing that? You're saying it's tough hiring. Like, are you noticing this younger generation is just like totally different?
I don't know. I'm hesitant to speak on like the younger generation because I was like an absolute terror when I was younger. Like I did not have the trajectory of most people in the building who are like very smart and had this like illustrious rise. Like I was getting into a lot of trouble and like abusing drugs and alcohol from like a very young age. So my trajectory as a young person, when I see like kids these days, I'm like, oh, dude, you're doing great. When I was 13, like I was doing like way worse stuff. Yeah. So my bar is pretty low.
They're not experiencing life like you did, huh?
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it. But I don't, the biggest thing I see is grammar and writing skills. Is that like the this current I don't know, what letter are we on, like X or Z?
I think it's
I don't
Z,
know.
yeah.
Like, so growing up with social media and text, like I think my generation is probably the last, like we had dial-up internet. I didn't get a smartphone until I was in college. So I wasn't really like texting. We had like instant messenger on AIM,
Right.
you know, which you could only do from a desktop computer. So you couldn't do it all the time. And yeah, just, I don't know. It seems like folks just like aren't reading books anymore. And their grammar has gotten so bad because of texting and social media use, like constantly.
Are you having to edit like LOLs out of things? And
it's like some of the cover letters I've gotten, I would say like half. It's like depressing, like how bad the grammar. It's like I would
AI is supposed to make.
I would have been embarrassed to like submit some of these things, but they're not even seeing it. That's the issue.
Right.
It's like they're not even seeing the mistake, the run-on sentences, the like inaccurate punctuation, the like blatant spelling errors. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe Chat GPT can help.
You're not noticing improvements with AI?
No, definitely not.
Are you guys, as a staff, are you guys using AI in any way?
Yeah, some of my staff will help if they're like have writer's block or something. Will help. Like create like a social media prompt or something that then they edit. We never do like straight up AI language. But basically, I mean, I'm okay with it as long as it's not replacing like your own like skill of a writer, and also like we're always emulating the assembly member's voice. So it needs to reflect that as well. But if you have writer's block and you want to like prompt yourself with, you know, a little AI generated like blurb, I think that's fine. Just don't use it to write your college essays.
Yeah.
You know, there's a happy medium we can find between like Skynet going live and writing social media prompts, you know?
So kind of what we're here in March, committee season's about to start. What's kind of your bill package looking like? What are you guys working on this year?
It's a lot. Yeah.
How many bills?
I think we're at 21.
Okay.
The assembly member is very focused on a few critical areas. One, I mean, you probably heard about our NEM bill. So basically trying to restore incentives or the incentive structure that was there before NEM 3.0, and seeing what that looks like. It's not just a matter of repealing NEM 3.0. It's putting something in new that's focused on what we're doing is tying into SB 100 climate goals, and also building in an equity and like storage capacity into that. So something that's taking into account more like the future that the CPUC and other like departments have said needs to include a huge scale up of residential solar adoption, basically. That's one. Wildfire is always a huge issue. Clean energy generation. So we're doing like a microgrid bill. We're doing a few local bills that were kind of inspired by ideas from constituents. We do There Ought to Be a Law every year, which is like where constituents can submit ideas, and we actually...
Where do you get most of the ideas from? Is it through social media? Is it...
We get most of our ideas from the district, literally like going around and talking
just like at
to
coffee
folks.
And communities.
Yeah, we have a super educated, like involved, engaged district.
Yeah.
So
great, Instagram channels dedicated to the district.
Yeah, Marin Dad. Yeah. I got to meet him. He's like definitely in my parents' area because I see him visiting like all of the coffee shops and stuff I go to. I'm like, I'm gonna run into this dude. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and
get Damon to do some of those bits.
I want to get him on his Instagram channel. I haven't told him about this dude yet. Yeah, I'm gonna have to show him. Our comms director showed it to us. It was like not on my radar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But yeah, so we're doing some district bills. There Ought to Be a Law winner is like codifying mandatory wildfire evacuation plans for elementary schools that are in high risk zones. So we thought that was like a really good idea from a constituent, and we're pursuing that as a bill. So yeah, we just released our newsletter, which has all of our bills detailed out, and it's like 2 pages at this point. So it's going to be a robust bill package for sure.
You know, what's, I guess, kind of interesting about being a chief of staff is, you know, your job is mostly kind of behind the scenes process, getting stuff through. But along the way, you learn a lot of policy. Kind of what's some of the more interesting stuff you've learned being in the building?
Yeah. So I actually, as a chief of staff, you kind of build the role for how you want it to look for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I started as in policy as a ledge aide, and I've always loved policy. So I still staff bills. I still come up with ideas for bills, write with ledge council, work with our ledge director, and I'll do like 2 or 3 bills a year, basically. Usually like some of the easier stuff, just because I don't have capacity to do anything else.
So what bills are you doing this year?
Well, I don't want to categorize any of my bills as easy.
The state crap.
But Jennifer Fearing is going to give me crap if I don't mention our beaver relocation bill.
Okay.
But it's this awesome program that exists in the state, which is basically relocation of beavers.
Naughty beavers.
Yeah, exactly. To like a good habitat, and they just have huge ecological benefits. Mm-hmm. Their impact is like really amazing, and I'm getting to learn more about that and like the beaver believers, who are just this like group of environmentalists and folks who are involved in different organizations but are like hardcore beaver supporters. So there's like a book. We have like a little flag. It's like a California flag, but with a beaver on it. It's epic. But so like that's one of my bills that I'm going to staff this year. So like some of just like basic cleanup stuff, you know, like wonky stuff. Mm-hmm. We're not even like really doing press on.
Yeah.
So that's more of like my areas. Like besides the beaver one, like I'll take the non-sexy stuff and like help pass that through, because those tend to be like easier and more wonky stuff.
Get on the consent calendar.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be consent fantastic. Yeah.
Are there any, I guess, policy areas you're drawn to more? Or?
Yeah, I've always been like energy, clean energy, climate change, wildfires, public safety stuff has always been fascinating. But I would say like energy for sure has been a big one for me. I've always tried to do biomass bills in the past. So I was able to pass a couple good ones with Assemblymember Salas. We had one last year.
Different district, right? Yeah.
Way different district, man.
Pro oil.
Yeah. Went from pro oil to, if you don't take the no fossil fuel money pledge, you're essentially cannot run in our district. Yeah, which is great. I've always leaned more that way anyway. But working for Assemblymember Salas was great, because you're exposed to like a real, true, moderate, you know, working class district, which is, you know, probably the opposite of where I grew up specifically.
Right.
But you know, we have elements of that as well, just not as widespread, and different environmental conditions and things like that. So it's the Wild West out there in the Central Valley. It's a different world.
It's a different world. I went down to Bakersfield earlier this year.
Yeah, man.
And I was just like, wow, this is like a different town.
Yeah.
Just like
it's a different California.
Guns everywhere.
People don't, and people don't get that, like why he would take votes sometimes and be like, dude, just go down to the Central Valley and come back and leave LA or leave San Francisco, like go down there and meet like the folks there. Like he's voting exactly how he should be.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Any, I guess, promising technologies or stuff you're seeing out there that, you know, we can be hopeful we're going to solve some of these issues?
Yeah, I think wildfire, like technology is super interesting in terms of like mitigation. Wildfire fighting stuff, wildfire detection, sensors, things like that. These like huge pump hoses that just can like blast and put out fires from like miles away. A lot of drone stuff is like the hot topic now. Is, you know, is CAL FIRE gonna invest in like, you know, autonomous kind of like sky vehicles to help put out fires? So that's the main thing I've seen. There's always the conversation of AI, which I just like don't think we're ready to have in the Capitol. But
Well, it's kind of like hard to form like what it is. Like right now,
yeah, it's like,
these
dude,
apps you can ask questions.
I can't define it, and like I grew up in this like technology information age, so are we gonna have like a committee? I don't know. I'm sure we will, or have already had a committee hearing about it.
Which is kind of like how absurd these like smartphones are. Like my wife and I were just joking about, like everything has an app now.
Yeah.
And like for your kid's school, you have to have like 4 or 5 apps just for the school.
Yeah.
Kind of like, how did we survive before apps?
Yeah, I don't know.
So in 10 years, it should be interesting what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess election day today, a lot of campaigns coming up in November. Kind of what's your advice to, I guess, staff whose members terming out, or anybody looking for a job, coming up with a lot of new members coming in?
Yeah, I would start making the connections now. Identify the member who you want to work for. That's a big thing in the building to just basic happiness is having a good member. It makes all the difference. And having a good staff for that member too. Like people you want to be around for hours every single day and like go through the trenches with, right? So, talk around the building to your friends. Everyone knows who the good people to work for are and who maybe are a little more challenging. So figure that out for yourself. I will not disclose anything here. But it's important, like, take those steps now. And like start meeting with their chiefs, meet with the member if you can. Like, just be straight up with people. There's so much hesitancy, I think, in the building because we work in politics and people don't want to say the wrong thing. But it's like, just be more upfront.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. Like, I remember, I don't know, pre-COVID, like there was a lot more, I guess, commingling, a lot more staff getting together, talking to each other, potlucks, things like that.
Yeah.
Going from office to office. There seems like a lot less kind of networking.
There's a lot less, and just like, there's a lot less people though that were here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't recognize like half the faces in the building. But we're starting to return to doing like Donut Fridays and stuff, which was always the best, like commingling space. Just one office has free coffee and donuts, and then everyone descends like hungry vultures. Yeah, exactly, dude. It makes it all worth it.
Brown bag lunch. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
thanks for having
some
me.
Wisdom.
Yeah,
definitely will be helpful for some folks out there, and looking forward to what you're going to do this year. And we'll catch you later.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.